Hello and welcome to Inside Iraq. I'm Jassim Azzawi. The chaos in Iraq has induced fear of a potential repetition in Arab leadership, forcing many to revise their ambivalent position on the eve of the invasion. The Arab world is expected to help engineer a national reconciliation, but can that be achieved without a genuine nationalist government in Baghdad? And as the US prepares to pull the bulk of its troops in 2 years, can the leading Arab countries prevent a doomsday scenario in Iraq? Jamal Shayar reports.
These were the scenes on the streets of Arab capitals as the US launched Operation Enduring Freedom. The name did little to change their minds, unconvinced that democracy will come on the back of American tanks. They were certain that oil and Israel were the real reasons. In Baghdad you will dig your grave, they chanted. Arab leaders differed on how to deal with the inevitable onslaught. With massive US bases on their soil, the Gulf countries showed little or no opposition to the invasion. Mubarak of Egypt seemed resigned to the unfolding catastrophe, while al-Assad of Syria could muster little more than verbal defiance.
They destroyed mosques and churches, burned libraries and killed scientists and resistance men, but they will all go and we shall remain.
With readily available footage of the occupation and chaos in Iraq being broadcast across Arab TV stations, the Arab population was further enraged, forcing its leaders between a rock and a hard place, a process destined to last for some time, causing deep tension within the region. And as Saddam was toppled, you could almost feel the shiver running down the spines of Arab leaders. Gaddafi reversed 30 years of hostility towards the West. The bombing of 3 hotels in Amman heightened the fear of sectarian tension spilling into neighboring countries. The fragmentation of Iraq into 3 warring entities has sent shockwaves throughout the region of potential reoccurring scenarios in Lebanon, Palestine, and further afield. Iraq's calamity has instilled in many Arab leaders a great dose of skepticism and fear in their perception of the US. Now they have come to realize that this giant does not care on whose toes he treads. Jamal Al-Shayal for Inside Iraq.
To understand how Arab diplomats view Iraq and what Arab leaders can do to help stabilize Iraq, I'm joined from Damascus by Dr. Faisal AlMughdad, Syria's Deputy Foreign Minister, and from Cairo by Dr. Nabil Shaath, former Foreign Minister of Palestinian Authority, and by Hisham Youssef, spokesman of the Arab League Secretary General. Gentlemen, welcome to Inside Iraq. Dr. Faisal AlMughdad, let me start with you. Every imaginable mistake in the occupation of Iraq has been committed. There are many, we don't have time to repeat them. So how do you see the way out of this quagmire?
Allow me at the beginning to send our greetings to our Iraqi brothers and sisters who are under US invasion and occupation, who have suffered too much. The Iraqi people is a great people. It has played a historical role, a very influential role in science, in contributing to the civilization, to humanity. From the beginning, we stood against that invasion. We are still standing against the invasion. A very important meeting of the Security Coordination Committee was held in Damascus for 2 days, in which very important decisions were made. We took part also in the meeting on securing the safety of Iraqi refugees. In Syria, we have more than 1.5 million Iraqi refugees. We say that all these calamities, all these brutalities committed by the American invaders against Iraqis should be stopped. We believe that the only way is to safeguard Iraq, to safeguard the security of Iraq, is an American withdrawal from that Arab country.
Well, that is perhaps a long time coming, Dr. Nabil Shaath. Victory in Iraq has been proven very elusive, whether for the Americans or for the Iraqis. And there is a phase that just starting now. It's called the withdrawal phase. From your vantage of point of view here in the Middle East, how do you see that playing out?
We really, from the very beginning, stood against that American invasion of Iraq. We saw in it the beginning of a new era of division, destruction, misery, occupation, hegemony. And, you know, Iraq is very popular in Palestine. And the people in Palestine, despite their own misery under occupation, have really felt very much for their Iraqi brothers. The question of occupation by the Americans have not resolved anything. In fact, it just exploded everything in Iraq. And it's bringing down the Bush government anyway, and with it the Republicans, and in fact the cause of conservatism in the United States. But it has reverberated all around our area, and we think in Palestine that a solution of the Iraqi problem and a solution of the Palestinian problem are quite related, and a lack of solution in one will make it very difficult for the other.
How do you manage this fallout, which has been reverberated, as Dr. Hisham said, whether it's in Saudi Arabia or in Amman? Now it's even spreading into Lebanon and the Palestinian Authority. Is there a way to deal with this multiple fires all over the place?
Well, we have no choice. I think the region as a whole is passing through a very difficult period, whether it's in the occupied Palestinian territories, whether it's in Lebanon, whether it's in Iraq. The situation in the whole region is in turmoil. And we have to start working to try to resolve all these issues, whether it's resolving the situation in Palestine or Lebanon or the Iraqi situation. And as it was mentioned by you and by your guests as well, it has been very difficult, and victory in whatever terms it is described by the different people has been elusive. So the question now is how to limit the damages that we have been seeing in the region and in Iraq, with hundreds of people dying every single day. So we have tried, we worked on this issue, and as far as we were concerned, we thought that the only solution to the situation in Iraq is through national reconciliation.
Regarding that national reconciliation, Hisham Yusuf, the Arab League, it was very early on, back in 2004 and 2005, held a series for Iraqi politicians to come to terms on a round table headed by the Secretary General. And nothing happened of that. Was that simply because people of different political agendas, you know, are completely polarized, or was that simply because time needed to pass by and now they realize they've missed a big opportunity?
Well, I don't think that it would be accurate to argue that nothing happened. First of all, to get all the political forces in Iraq to sit around one table, this in itself is a success. And they have achieved a number of agreements on a number of important issues. But the question is, we can't do this by ourselves. It required national reconciliation, required the support of everybody. And the reason why things did not evolve in a more successful way was because there were different agendas by different players on the Iraqi soil, whether it's regional players or whether it's international players. And as a result of the conflicting interests, and that we weren't all working as an international community in the same direction, we weren't able to build on the early steps that were achieved by the Arab world.
The description of the overall situation, the reverberations of the situation in different Arab countries is well defined by the reality in the Arab countries. In fact, Arab countries do not have a unified position towards the situation in Iraq. In fact, in the Arab League, Arabs before the invasion have agreed that no one Arab country will give any facilities for the US invasion of Iraq. But the pressures of the United States, the brutal way it pursued its policy, those who are not with us are against us policy, has changed the overall situation.
The national reconciliation, Dr. Nabil, brings to mind the national reconciliation of the Palestinians. You had that under the auspices of the Saudi with the Mecca Accord, and nothing came of it. Do the Arabs somehow, they need an external force, even within the Arab fold, in order to achieve that kind of reconciliation?
We need Arab intervention And I think the fact that the Mecca Accords were made after President Abbas have visited Damascus and Cairo and Amman and finally Riyadh was very important. I don't want anybody to really marginalize the achievement made in the Mecca Agreement. And I think finally we've got to get back to an agreement of that sort. The fact it has failed does not really in any way mean that the Arab role has failed and should stop. On the contrary. And that, I think, is the same thing with Iraq. I think the Arabs in general should have intervened much earlier. And they should have stayed the course, even though it's difficult, even though the Americans are not going to make it easy for the Arabs to have a solution while they're occupying Iraq. But I think Iraq and Palestine, as much as we and our Iraqi brothers take a lot of responsibility for what has gone on, but they are a telling sign that the Arab mechanism has failed to deal with Arab problems. And that is where we need to work at in order to save both Iraq and Palestine.
Dr. Nabil Sha'ath, thank you. We'll take a short break now. When we come back, I'm going to ask Hisham Youssef about the expanded role for the United Nations. Is it an American admission of failure or a new political coverage for the US administration? Stay with us.
If it wasn't for the Gulf countries, there wouldn't be US forces there now. The problem is an Arab one and not an Iraqi Arab one. Muammar Gaddafi, Libyan president.